Richard Skipper celebrates. Every show is a celebration. Each show, Richard delivers the artists you love, showcasing what makes them unique. Never gossipy. The antidote to a sometimes hectic world. Now, here's your host, Richard Skipper.
Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to the latest edition of Richard Skipper Celebrates. This is the show in which I celebrate artists and their body of worth. And I am very excited about tonight's guest because not only is she a great artist, she also happens to be a very dear friend. We truly are like brother and sister. We have our ups, we have our downs, we've had our good times, we've had our bad times, but we also always come back together in some form or another. When I think about Sue Matsuki, it's hard for me to imagine a time when she was not in my life. I've been thinking a lot today about what do I say in my introduction. And I'm reminded of a story by William Shatner. Years ago, he was being interviewed on the Larry King Show. That tells you how long ago that was. And Larry King said, and this was when he was turning 80. He was on Broadway. He had a new autobiography. He was doing the Priceline commercials. He was very, very busy. And Larry King said, "What do you attribute to your success?" And he said, "I get out of the house." So when opportunities come your way, I tend to say yes more than no, although it's difficult these days in the times that we're living in. But about 25 plus years ago, my dear friend, mutual friends of Sue, John Patrick Schutz and Bob Mattern, invited Danny, my husband, and I to a brunch. There was a brunch bunch, and they used to meet every Sunday in a different restaurant, and they would just sit around and schmooze and get to know each other. And it was a little bit of networking and just a lot of fun. And I really miss those days. But at that one brunch that I went to, I was seated next to Sue Matsuki. And I felt from the moment that I met her that I was meeting one of my oldest lost dear friends. And everybody who has met Sue, and you all know, those of you who know who she is, know exactly what I'm talking about. She's that person. She's Earth Mother. She's friend. She's mom. She's aunt. She's sister. She's all those things to all of us in the cabaret community. And I want to celebrate her today because she is always worth celebrating. But before I bring Sue on, I'm going to give you a sample of Sue on stage and how wonderful it would be for all of us to see all of us on stage sooner rather than later. Ladies and gentlemen, here is Sue.
And you. We promise to give you, how's that for campings? We promise to give you the best 60 minutes of your day. Right here in this one more time. I want you. I want you. I want you too. I want you to be. What? I want you to be my baby. Doesn't help when you cry. That's why I'll live and I'll die. Devil may care. Devil may care. Devil may ba-ba-do-ba-da-da, ba-da-da-do, ba-da-ba-do-ba-do-ba-do-ba-do-ba. I don't want love, me neither. I'm going to rethink this whole backup series. You touch me. I hear the sound of mandolins. You kiss me. And with your kiss, my world begins. Now you say you're lonely. You cry the whole night through. Well, you can cry me a river. Cry me a river. I cried a river over you. never sorry for being so untrue. Go on and cry me a river. Cry me a river. I cried a river over you. Here in your arms, where the world is impossibly still, with a million dreams to fulfill, and a matter of moments until the dancing ends. Here in your arms, where everything seems to be clear, not a solitary thing do I fear, except when the moment comes near the dancing's end. Is you is, or is you ain't my baby? The way you actin' lately makes me doubt. You is my baby, baby. Seems my flame in your heart's done gone out. Like a leaf clings to a tree. Oh, my darling, cling to me. For we're creatures of the wind, and wild is the wind. Wild is my love for you.
I want to acknowledge that sizzle reel was put together by Steve Bustamante.
He did such a good job.
Such a great job. And as I'm watching this, I am reminded once again how much I miss this art form.
It's funny. I welled up not at my own performance. I welled up at the thought when I was singing "Here in Your Arms." It just made me so nostalgic to be back on stage in the arms of our beloved audience. So
now, you know, and Sue knows this because Sue and I actually Zoom with each other a lot. And we just did a masterclass together, and all kinds of wonderful things that we do where we do get together and we chat and talk. But the last time that Sue and I physically saw each other was on March 10th. Sue was my date. We went to see Jennifer Pace.
Jennifer Pace at the Beachman, yeah.
At the Beachman. And that was also, believe it or not, the last time I've been in Manhattan since this whole pandemic began. Now, I know because you and I do talk, but if you could let everybody else know, how are you really doing in the midst of all this?
Well, I thought I was doing great until this very moment, and I just got overwhelmed by remembering how great it was to be in front of people and to perform for people. Winter Rhythms and Urban Stages, we just are in the crux of producing. I'm sure we'll talk about that later, and it's different. Personally, I am someone who keeps busy, so I'm constantly starting a new project, and I'm looking forward to sewing. I want to sew again. You know, there's things I just want to do that now I have time to do, because I do think we're back in for a while, you know, again, until the levels and the statistics come down and until the vaccine starts to prove itself and stuff. So, but overall, Ken Rowe and I are healthy. Thank God. We are keeping busy. We have space in our house where we don't have to be on top of each other, unlike a lot of other people who are having that kind of space issue and being on top of each other. And we shut off our phones after dinner and we just come together and binge watch something or watch old movies or something at night. So we're making sure we still have a lot of time together, but uninterrupted by other stuff. But I'm also using this opportunity to learn so much electronically and how to perform differently, and still looking around to see. I have this new show in the can to see how I want to present it in a way that still lets the work sound and look great, but also, this is the internet. This goes out and it stays forever. So you don't want to put out not so great work. So I'm still working on trying to figure out a way to do that, and represent my work the way I would like it represented.
And we can talk about some of that as well. Some of these questions seem a little redundant to me, and I know they're going to seem redundant to you because you and I have already discussed these things.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to share this and how you're getting through this with everyone else that's tuning in right now. When we have quite a lot of people, you are much loved in this community, madam.
Well, I feel it, and I love back. I love everyone back. All of these people, Jessica and Tim, Michael, David, Glenn, Bobby, Russ, Renee, all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Well, I was reading an article yesterday about transactional living. And so many people go through life tit for tat. As you know, I say at the end of all my shows, go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. But that's always been your motto. Right. You've always been out there. You've always been giving and giving and giving to this community. And you are the type of person, you are that person who rolls up her sleeves and says, okay, I'm here. What do you need? And you've always been there. Has that always been a part of who you are?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had 7 brothers and 5 were younger. So I was always the second mom and I was always the caretaker, and I was never blessed with children in my own life. So I think I kind of put that on the cabaret community, especially for the youngins that are coming up and just wanting to be a guiding.
But I have to say, I mean,
guiding arm to them,
You're the godmother of several people's children in our community. And you are that doting grandmother, godmother, fairy godmother. So you do carry that around with you.
Well, it's as rewarding back to me as it seems to be received from other people. I don't, like you, I don't think about it. I just roll up my sleeves and do it. And I've learned a lot from that. I mean, Richard, when I met you at the Brunch Bunch, shortly after that, I volunteered to help you dress when you were doing Carol. And that's really how we became intimately close on a lot of levels. Yeah. I saw you in your underpants.
And it was around this time. And oh my God, today's the 13th.
Yes, it is.
On December 12th, whatever year that was, I was lucky enough to appear at Carnegie Hall as Carol Channing. And you were backstage dressing me. And not only were you helping me out, but you also helped Sam Harris out.
I got to put pimple cream on Sam Harris. He come in, he goes, "Hey, you, I hear you're helping Richard. Can you fix this?" And I'm like, "Sure." He's about this big. So I'm like kind of hiding the little pimple he had on his head. He's just an adorable man.
Sam,
we kept in touch on and off. So.
That's great. I want to go back because you didn't start out to be a singer. You started out to be a ballet dancer.
I was.
Although when you were, was it 9 years old, when you were singing a questionable song?
No, I was actually 6 or 7.
6, okay.
My babysitter, Willamea Owens, she was my mom's best friend. She took care of us, and she also had a house full of people. And this is when it was just my mother, my brother Peter, and I, before my mom got remarried to my wonderful stepfather, Tom. But we lived in a project, and Willamea took care of us. And Willamea used to always play all the great ladies of jazz. And of course, Ella spoke to my heart because she played Ella a lot. And I used to sing Blue Skies, and she'd put me up on the coffee table with one of those old-fashioned potato masher things, and I would sing to the potato masher. And and so there was this baby beauty contest at 6 or 7. I must have been about 7 because it was for the Little Miss Hamilton Park competition. And I went in, and my mom had taught me this beautiful song called The Boy I Love. But when I got up on the table, I started belting out Love for Sale, not having any idea what the song connotated or what it meant. And I remember Willamea looking at my mom shooting her a look, and Willamea just cracking up. And I think my mother was under the table at that point, waiting for social services to come pick her up or something. But it was a true story.
But you grew up in a household where, as you describe it, biker brothers.
Yeah.
So they were not listening to the kind of music that you were listening
Oh
to.
no. Oh no. Everything was in 12 bar blues. You know, my birth father, Stuart, aka Buster, was a Harley riding biker, as was my grandfather, as were many of my brothers. And Buster got his name because he fell off his motorcycle and got busted up. So he was Stuart Walter Buster Trosell. And he taught me my nursery rhymes actually in 12 bar blues. That's a story I tell on stage all the time. And literally, da 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 da, I'm a little teapot, da 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 da, short and stout. So I have all these nursery rhymes, which we created a song, and Laurie Krause and I have actually done it on stage of all the nursery rhyme blues of the different, tunes my father taught me. So yeah, they were listening to a lot of rock and roll, a lot of blues, a lot of other stuff. Definitely not American songbook songs.
So tell us a little bit about your parents and the household that you grew up in, and also you having 6 brothers who had a completely different outlook on life than you did.
It's hard. I don't think I've ever talked about my family except in little snippets on stage about the joke parts of our lifestyle. My birth father divorced my mom when I was 5 and my brother was 8. And we grew up in this project, and my brother and I had some abuse from a babysitter. And if it weren't for Willamea being there for my mom, I don't know that we would have survived, because my mom had to work like 3 jobs. My mom, later on, we found out was clinically bipolar, but that term didn't exist back then.
Right.
So my brother and I used to call her Jackie and Jane. Jacqueline was her name. So Jackie was nice mommy, and Jane was, crazy mom. And I've never brought this to stage because I would never disrespect or, you can hate the mental illness, but you can't hate the person. The mental illness was what it was. And it was tough going. And then when my mom married my stepdad, he literally took us out of the projects and brought us to a white picket fenced community and a house, and we had our own rooms, and it was just a different way to grow up. And he was a gentle, sweet man.
It's interesting. Excuse me. I was listening to an interview the other night with Viola Davis, who's now in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and she grew up in a very poor section. And now she's living in this magnificent house, but she said she still has to convince herself she's not poor. Even to this day. And I'm wondering with you, even though your family had moved and this change, was it an easy transition for you, or did you continue to hold on to what you had?
I always was waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I, with my mother's illness and Tom, obviously, my stepfather obviously knew and was living through some of those moments with us. He also had a son. So I had a stepbrother. And then my real father, I hate to call him my real father, but my birth father got remarried and he had 2 sons. And then over the years, my mother and Tom, my stepdad, had 3 more sons. So 7 brothers altogether, 1 biological, 5 half brothers, and 1 stepbrother altogether.
You need a scorecard to throw.
Yeah, you did. But in my house were 2 older brothers and 3 younger brothers that when my mother was Jane, I could always tell how she woke us up in the morning, and I'm not going to say what was said, but I could always tell by the tone. And if the tone was there, I would get the boys up and make them lunches and get them fed and get them off to school in a loving way. And, she did actually go and try to get help at one point. But again, when there's mental illness in your household, that person has to, like any alcoholic or anyone that has an issue, has to first admit that there's an issue. And to her dying day, she never really accepted that any of these issues were related to her.
And we'll move on in a moment, but I want to ask, and first of all, thank you for being honest and open about this.
No, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just not anything that you bring to stage, It's just
But with your mom, were there triggers that set her off, or did it come out of left field for you?
Sometimes it came out of left field. Other times I could kind of see it building a new. And yet, I gotta say, just to balance this, when she was Jackie, there was no one more loving or giving. And, sometimes we learn what to be from our parents, and sometimes we learn what not to be from our parents. And everything that I am that you're saying is good, my generosity and my wanting to nurture, came from what I lived through, nurturing my brothers and finding a way to forgive and nurturing her to some degree. Because when I felt things were coming on, I had to kind of immediately go into second mommy mode and get the potatoes peeled. And, to this day, it's why I have mad skills. I can cook and sew and dice and slice and clean and take care of kids. That's it. But, out of whatever adversity people would think that upbringing came a lot of things that made me who I am today. So I bless everything. And
it's funny that you say that, because I have, the same thing. You and I have shared my own stories with you. Mm-hmm. But what kept you grounded through all of this?
Music and seriously, and I'm not just saying that because, I'm a singer now, but I would go up to my room and I had, remember those flecked 12 by 12 mirror panels that you can stick on your wall and create like a living room environment. Well, I had them up in my room, and I had a ballet bar on one of my walls, and I had my little record player, and I would go up there. And at the time I was dancing, and I would sing from start to finish, Funny Lady, Funny Girl, Sound of Music. I had a very, and then Tower of Power and Earth, Wind and Fire. I mean, I had this really strange kind of music, not really American songbook, but Ella and Peggy Lee and Rosemary Clooney were also included in that, because oh my goodness, Nat King Cole. These were the albums my mom played that, and Miss Ella, Miss Willamea played that translated, but it was mostly show tunes. And my biggest dream, and if I ever come back in another life, I want to come back as a Broadway star, because watching these shows that have been on, the Prom,
I watched it
also the NBC Broadway special. If I could dream a dream and just say, I want to be a Broadway star, because what they have given me in my life in terms of escapism and beauty and hope, to sit in a theater and take in all this talent and just be so awed by other people's openness to share. So, going up and dancing through a lot of the tension that I went through. I suffered, not surprisingly, from migraines my entire life, and realized many, many years later that the stress that I was under as a little kid to be an adult at that age was kind of unfair, but it's what it was. Mm-hmm. I no longer have migraines. I wonder why.
It's interesting. Anyone who grows up in that kind of a household, and I'm there as well, we all know you spend your first 18 years of my life walking around on eggshells, mm-hmm. Because I took it upon myself that sometimes I was the trigger that would, set off something.
Yes.
But you mentioned that you have this bar in your room, and we're not talking drinking bar.
No, ballet bar.
No, ballet bar. Were you already taking dance lessons at that time?
Yeah, I started dance lessons fairly late, at about 7, and I took to it. I was never really built to be a ballerina. I was tall and zoftic. And at an early age, like at 12 or 13, I started to develop. So from 7 to 13, there were a lot of changes going on. And I was a rounded girl. I wasn't heavy, but I was a rounder girl with a bigger chest. And I'll never forget, I was auditioning for the Corps de Ballet of the Hartford Ballet Company School. And it was Edward Villella at the time, I'm pretty sure it was Edward Villella that was auditioning us. And it was in Miss Elaine's dance studio in Waterbury, Connecticut. And I did the death scene to Swan Lake. And before I danced, he walks up to me and he looks at me and he goes, "My darling, you're not a ballerina, you're a burlesque queen." And I'm like, okay, and now I have to be a ballerina. Great, thanks. Dance the hell out of that number. I remember when my arms were coming over and I'm dying, I'm like, oh, I am so killing this, burlesque queen. And afterwards, he picked me up from the death pose. He presented me to the people in the audition room and he apologized to me and said, "I'm sorry, that was beautiful." Now, I didn't make to the Corps de Ballet. I was 13, 13 or 14 at the time, but they invited me to go to the Hartford School of Ballet school. And I started going up on the bus to Hartford and studying with them for a while. And then we had classes with Alvin Ailey, and we had classes with Luigi. I know you just interviewed.
And tomorrow night we're celebrating him with the Legacy Awards.
Right. So, so you'd come to from Hartford. I then got brave enough to get on a bus, come to New York, and take master classes with these other places. And, and then when Jamison, the beautiful 6 foot tall woman from the Harlem Ballet Company, started to dance, all bets were off. When Judith came on the scene, it didn't matter what your body type was. It was the strength and the beauty of how you danced. And she just kind of made it all right for all of us that weren't prima ballerina types to just dance, So
now, when you were in school, were you exposed to the arts in school beyond what you were doing as extracurricular activities?
Not really. I actually was offered, I don't even think you might know this because we know a lot about each other, but I was offered a scholarship to Pratt, a full scholarship to Pratt Art School. I was a drawer. I drew. I was an artist. But my problem was I could copy anything and I could get a real good sense of, but I didn't have that original artist thought and brain about creating art. So I didn't feel it was fair for me to take a scholarship in an area I wasn't sure I was going to excel in, because I knew I didn't have that next level of artistic creativeness in terms of drawing. So I didn't go to Pratt, but I ended up going to the University of Hartford, which had Hart School of Music. But it never occurred to me I wasn't singing. I was a dancer, but I knew Hartford because I was with the Hartford Ballet Company School. And so it was easy for me to kind of go back and forth. And I ended up getting scholarship at University of Hartford for, I studied political science and communications. I thought I'd go into newscasting. And, none of that played out, but we learn more in college from the experience and learning how to be independent and how to study than we sometimes do academically. So I never regretted it for a minute.
Now, when the transition began, when you started singing, did the singing and dancing overlap, or did you stop the dancing and focus only on the singing?
Oh, it's funny because when I came to New York, I started, I was the choreographer for a musical version of the Christmas Carol. I was living in the Bronx, working at Fordham University, and someone there remembered that I was a dancer or something. So they asked me if I would come choreograph this musical version at the new Community Theater Players, which was done at Jacobi Hospital. They had a beautiful theater there. So I said, yeah, sure. And then I broke my leg. So then here I am on crutches. I was a broken-legged choreographer kicking my leg up on my crutches. And then that started me going to the theater. And while I could always sing, and I knew I could sing because in church I was giving solos and I was giving parts, but I also have this kind of strange form of dyslexia where I don't see the musical notes on the right staff. So I would pretend that I knew what I was reading in choir, but my ear was so good that I could hear I often got the alto line, that I would hear the alto line harmony and get it. Of course, it's usually just one note anyway when you're an alto, but so no one ever knew that I didn't read music, and no one ever fixed it or corrected it. So I kind of got away with that, but it also trained my ear. But I would get solo parts, so I knew that people thought I had a decent voice. But then when it came to auditioning for theater, I think they're playing our song in West Side Story. I did with them. I was Velma in West Side Story, and I was one of the 3 girls, and they're playing our song.
I was one of the voices of Vernon.
Oh, there you go. So, but when I had to audition, I remembered I was in the bathroom. I literally vomited. I was so nervous that I had to audition. I had to sing. The dancing part was fine, but the fact that I had to sing made me so nervous. I actually vomited before I auditioned. So I don't know that they heard my best, but they still cast me. And I didn't start singing until years after that, when I went to the Village Gate to hear.
No, stop. Because before we get there, you also were part of a dance team.
Yeah, Sue and Lou.
And, what was the trajectory of that part of your life and career? Yeah. And why did that disband?
Well, Louis Irisari is one of my dearest and oldest friends. And we went through high school together. And then he and I still danced through college. We were 17-ish. I think Louis was a year older than I was. And we were doing salsa, hustle, merengue, cha-cha. We were doing all like the ballroom dances. And remember, back in the day, it was disco.
Mhm.
So we were hired to start like 8:15, 8:30, 8:45, 9, 9:15, 9:30, up until 10 o'clock in 15-minute increments to go from club to club to get on the dance floor and start dancing, not as a showpiece, but to just bring other people to the dance floor, because whoever started to dance the earliest, then the more drinks they got from people getting on the dance floor, getting hot and buying drinks. So we were kind of made a circuit, and we would get on the dance floor and start dancing, and then everybody get on the dance floor. We'd go to the next club, start dancing. Everybody get on the dance floor, go to the next club. But we technically weren't supposed to be in there because I was just 17, but nobody ever knew because I always looked older than I was. But I'll never forget, Louis and I were practicing some dip, and he was holding my wrists and he was trying to dip me in the kitchen, and it was linoleum. And I slid down on the floor, and Louis like spread eagled on top of me. And this is where my mother was very funny. She walked in, she goes, "Oh, Louis, I'd like to learn that step, please." You know?
Good for mom.
Good for mom. Yeah. You know, she did have a great sense of humor. So I guess she had to.
I'm always interested in that pivotal moment in someone's life where they decide that they are going to commit themselves to a life as an entertainer. What was that pivotal moment for you?
Probably 3 years ago. No, I'm just kidding. I've been doing this pretty much 35 years, 33 years at Don't Tell Mama. As you know, they put my poster up to celebrate that. And I did a show celebrating my 33rd year at Don't Tell Mamas. But I had been singing prior to that at the Village Gate. So
that brings us to this point. Did you move to New York, or were you commuting back and forth from Connecticut?
I moved right after college. I was hired to be a resident director of Fordham University up in the Bronx. My resident director became an associate dean at Fordham, and our dean became the dean of housing. So my friend Peter and Mel, my best friends from University of Hartford, moved here, and then they brought me to New York, and that's how I moved to New York. And then after I did that for a year and a half or 2 years, I think, I got a job with Funkin' Wagnall's Encyclopedias. Now, I wasn't singing or dancing at this point. Louis and I would kind of go out once in a while and still, you know, turn it out on the dance floor, but I wasn't doing anything professionally, artistically. And then from Funkin' Wagnall's Encyclopedias, I worked for a marketing firm. And then I went to Japan Travel Bureau, which is where I met my husband, Ken Rowe, and worked there for 8 or 9 years. And then when he and I started dating, I left. And then I ended up with a delightful human being, Mr. Ian Sloan, that I worked for 23 years as a personal assistant, full charge bookkeeper. I ran his life. I ran his family's life, you know, did parties for them. It was a great job. And he was so wonderful in supporting. Like, I was working at the Metropolitan Opera at the time, whenever I had a gig. And it was in, I guess, right after JTBI and while working for Ian that I actually started singing.
Now, when I met you, you were working for Ian. And it's funny, as I'm sitting here talking to you, because you are pretty much full-time now performing as a singer. I had, you know, until you just mentioned it, I had forgotten about that. But you were the assistant to a, folks, very successful, wealthy, important person in New York. What was it? And I know, knowing you personally, everything that you bring to the table, but how did you get that job? And what was it about you that you feel got you that job?
Well, actually, I forgot. I had, in between Japan Travel Bureau, I had worked for this law firm. I won't say the name because they literally picked up stakes and got out of town like thieves in the night. But Ian was one of our tenants, separate from the lawyers. I was the office manager for a law firm on Park Avenue. And on Monday, I came into the office and there were lighting fixtures hanging. They had just picked up and left in the middle of the night on the weekend or whatever. No explanation to me. Something was going on, clearly. Someone was after them. And so I knew Ian was in South Africa, and I called him and I said, "This is what it is." And he goes, "Can you do me a favor? Can you move my office?" So I found real estate for us. I got a sublet from another office person that we knew, and I got his office moved. And thereafter, he was like, hey, can you just stay on for a while and just kind of answer my phones in the morning? Because I was just starting to sing at that point. So I didn't want a full-time job. I really wanted to focus on singing and auditioning and stuff like that. So I started in the morning, but, because he was in foreign countries, it was actually more advantageous for me to work in the afternoon because of the time difference, so that he can connect with me and everything. So, and then it just turned into a full-time job, with him understanding that when I needed to do anything artistic, that there would be.
And he was very supportive of you.
Oh, incredibly supportive. I mean, I had 3-4-hour rehearsals at the Metropolitan Opera, and I would come back afterwards, after rehearsal, and finish my work. As long as my job got done, he never said anything. Yeah.
And how long has it been now since you retired from Ian?
I think it's 7 or 8 years.
Was that an easy transition for you? Do you miss it?
I miss him. I don't miss the work. I don't miss the office. I don't miss, it wasn't an easy transition because, as you've heard a little bit about my life, I have worked from the time I was 12 years old. I've gotten paid to work since I was 12 years old. I made posters and sold them at Christmas time. I helped my brother deliver papers. I helped my mother clean a dentist office, and she paid me, so I'd never been taken care of by a man. I had never not making my own money. So the hardest part, believe it or not, was when my husband said, I really want to travel more. And if we're going to go away for 2 or 3 months, you can't have a full-time job. I need you to consider this. And, we talked about putting me on an allowance. And I just hated it. I hated the fact that I wasn't making my own money. And, it's not like I was a mom with 3 kids. If I was a mother raising his children, that's my job. Okay, fine, put me on an allowance. But the fact that I was a healthy-bodied woman that could still work bothered me. So that was the hardest transition. But God bless Ian. Ian gives me 2 years of gross annual salary as a parting gift. So I was able to sustain for 4 years without taking any money, until it got to the point where it's like, okay, now I think I need to take an allowance so that I can still sing and produce. And then singing and producing have supplemented. Well, as you all know, we don't make a lot of money in this business, but my feeling was, as a businesswoman, if I broke even, I was winning. If I wasn't in the hole, I was winning.
Now I want to jump on the path of your cabaret career. And I want to go back to your finding Trudy Mann at the Village Gate, because Trudy Mann, and you were, again, when you and I met, you were still, she was going from venue to venue she was doing open mics before anybody else was doing open mics. Yeah. She was really right out there. But what took you to Trudy Mann, and what kept you coming back?
I think I popped into Kelly's. You remember Kelly's at the very end of the Village? And predominantly a lesbian bar, but who knew?
I won a talent contest at Kelly's.
Well, me too. I went in there, and a gentleman by the name of Christian Daisy and Vanessa Vickers were the piano players. Christian, I'm still friends with here on Facebook. He might even be watching. But Christian and Vanessa were the 2 main piano players there. And I met this great gal named Elaine Paxson there. And I got up and I sang. I can't even remember what I sang. Oh, I think it was Crazy, because nothing hits more than crazy in a lesbian bar, let me tell you. And this gentleman, Mick the Quick, you remember Mick the Quick?
Oh my God.
Mick gave me $20 and said, that was fantastic, So then Elaine and I became friendly, and one or the other of us would always sing Crazy because we knew it was like a Pavlovian dog response. We'd get $20 and then we can drink all night. So from there, someone said, oh, you should go to the Village Gate. They have an open mic, but you have to audition for it. And Stan Edwards, not the radio persona Stan Edwards, but Stan Edwards, a singer, and Gary Pace, Jennifer Pace's dad. Yes. Gary Pace was the house pianist. Again, Christian and Vanessa would also sub in. I met Gregory there. I met Gregory Teroyan. He was playing for a gal named Judy Beatty then. So I've known Gregory more than the 25 years I've worked with him. I knew him for 30 years, having met him at the Village Gate. And so I went there and I auditioned, and they said, yeah, you can be part of the core team. The core team was Trudy and myself and Greg Calderon, Elaine Paxson, a couple other singers, Linda Ipanema, who eventually married Stan, Gary, of course. And then there was a comedian, Nancy, that she'd get up and, we had the one comedian. But Richard, Tony Bennett walked through there, because remember, the upstairs room was the big name headliner place. So we were on the sidewalk with people literally sticking their noses on the windows watching us sing. And we're like, this, and they're like, looking in the window at us. But I'll never forget it. Tony Bennett came in before his show. He sat at the bar one night, and afterwards he grabbed my hand when I walked by and he goes, great number. He was just such a generous soul and such a generous person. But Trudy Mann was the lady. Trudy Mann came up to me, and everything I learned about choosing a song, about how to deliver a song, started with Trudy Mann, because Trudy had great taste in music. She arranged things differently, so it always sounded like so fresh. She opened up a world of music that I never knew existed, and would generously offer me suggestions on tunes that that I might want to consider to do. So it all started with Trudy.
And was it at that time that you met John and Bob?
John and Bob, I knew. How did I meet? God, I'd have to.
Schutz and Bob Matter and everyone.
Yeah. I don't know. Not at the Village Gate. I think I met them through the Brunch Bunch, might have been Maria Mercader, who we just lost to COVID. She was that CBS producer, that little adorable Filipino girl that was.
Movies. Yes.
Well, she was one of the early cases, but she also had a very compromised health circumstance. But I'd have to ask the boys. I can't remember how we met specifically, but I know Bob and I used to meet for coffee all the time in the Brunch Bunch, and that developed. I met Victoria Livengood, who is an opera star at the Metropolitan Opera, through them. So there was this cluster of friends, Lisa and Ken Sharp. So many people that were all performers that would meet on those Sundays, as you know, and just talk. And I kind of...
Excuse me, Glenn Charlo has a question for you. Mm-hmm. Trudy is now, Trudy and Ray are in California.
No, they moved from California. They are now living right above Nashville. Her daughter and her husband, who are both in their 70s, are doctors. And they brought Trudy and Ray to live, and they're in a beautiful senior healthcare facility that, it's an apartment. And when and if things turn and their health becomes compromised, it turns into more of a convalescent facility. But they're being very well taken care of. I talked to Trudy a month ago, I think.
Wow. Give her love.
I will. I'm going to call her for Christmas, so I'll tell her we spoke
to have her do this platform if she's interested. So please plant that seed with her, because she paved the way for so many people.
She really.
I think that Dana Lorge also came through Trudy, and so many other people.
And Ted Firth and Sadi Zane. Ted and Sadi were Trudy.
I want to clarify this. That Dana had a very successful career,
but she came back on
but going into cabaret and getting involved there.
Yeah, and but Ted Firth, the incomparable Ted Firth, and Sadi Zane were the house musicians for Trudy's open mic, and then Trudy used to sit there with a little snare drum and be the percussion. Remember that?
Yeah.
And her husband Ray was so proud of her, and he wrote a lot of her arrangements and everything. She was the best man at Ted's wedding.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
best person.
And you and Gregory, how did that come about?
Well, after having met him at the Village Gate and hearing how great he played, and Judy Beatty's this great jazz singer, who I'm still friends with on Facebook. It's just all this time has passed and we're all still connected somehow. So I was working with a gentleman by the name, oh my God. Anyway, he was a Broadway kind of player. He was part of Judy and Billy's cabaret class, which we don't have to go into, but he played for them. And I stayed with him for a while. And then when I realized I was moving away from what I thought were the start of my jazz roots, my jazzy standard roots, I'm really not a jazz singer per se, but I put out to the universe, as is the case with many of us, I said, man, I wish, oh, it was Bruce Levine. I said, I was ready to stop working with Bruce, and Bruce and I, you know Bruce, right?
Yes.
Great player. But I said, I wish I could remember the name of that dude that played for Judy Beatty down at the Village Gate. Now, this had been 7 years after meeting him. And his name, Gregory Terrorian. I mean, it's not like it's John Smith. His name popped into my head. I didn't ask anybody. It popped into my head. I was in work. I looked him up in the yellow pages. Remember the phone book? And there were only 2 Terrorians in there. And the first one was him. And I never forgot. I called him. I'm like, hi, you don't remember me. I met you at the Village Gate, but you're such a great player. I would love to. And I'm sure he's like, oh, dude, I cannot work with this woman. I was so excited to find him. And, you know, Gregory's personality, he's like, yeah, that was me, you know. Mm-hmm. So he goes, well, I'm only like a couple blocks away from your office. Why don't you come over and we'll see what happens? And that was the start of it.
And did you start jamming together before you started putting a show together? And how did your first show come about?
Oh, yeah. Well, we were working on material, and I'll never forget the first session with him. I brought something in, and Gregory's way of high praise is pull his hands off the piano. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? And he goes, now I remember you. So we both looked so different, but he remembered, which was so flattering that after 7 years, he'd remember my voice. So we just started working on material. And I think one of our first shows involved Helen Baldessari. I was studying with Helen Baldessari. And then I went from Helen to Lena Kotrakis, who I'm full circle with now as my director. And Jerry Geddes was in there helping direct me. And I think the first real cabaret show I did with Jerry Geddes and Gregory. And the rest is history, 25 years later.
But what are your memories of that first night when you, Sue Matsuki, step on stage for the first time, and the only thing separating you and the audience are your musicians?
Oh, dears.
Was it just Gregory, or did you have?
I think we started with just Gregory, and then we eventually added musicians. I remember one show that we did, one of my bassists showed up, not anyone I'm using now, showed up compromised, high as a kite.
Oh, I've been there.
Started taking liberties with a bass solo and just doing all these weird things. And I knew something was off, and he came in like after song 4, and he had a gash on his head. And I was just concerned that he was in an accident. And, you know, so I'm like Mama Sue, I'm worried about him on stage. And Gregory and Ron Tierno, my current and my drummer from way back then as well, 25 years with him as well, are looking at each other like, you know. And Gregory said to me, he goes, if you didn't consider yourself a musician, you earned your stripes tonight. Not everyone could have gotten through the dissident music, the craziness of what happened, knowing when to come in after a solo that wasn't intended. He said, you earned your stripes tonight. And then he and Ron went and talked to this person and said, she didn't deserve that, you know. And they ended up not paying him and giving me the money back. And so, yeah, we all have those kinds of moments on stage, but it took a while to kind of get used to working with the band. And I think over the past 5 years, I'm finally comfortable leading a band. And it took a long time. It takes a long time.
We see your comfort level in the opening sizzle reel that we saw. If you could go back right now to that night, could you have imagined the past 25 years of your life?
No, I thought it was a hobby, and it is to some extent, because of course I'm not getting paid any exorbitant salaries to do this.
It's not a hobby.
But it's a hobby that's turned into a profession. And I have made so many mistakes, both on and off stage, in terms of the learning curve that got me to where I am today, to where I am comfortable on stage, to where I can go with the flow if something crazy happens. And even respecting and liking my own voice. That was long and hard in coming, because there's so much stimuli out there that, you know, do awards matter? Do what other people, you know, you do the work. And when someone says, oh my God, I see such growth, people think that that's somewhat insulting, because it makes you think, oh my God, what was I doing before? But if they're not seeing growth, you're not doing your job. I don't care how old and how many more years I'm singing, that will be my mantra.
I found this quote: I have always considered it an honor to entertain. With every show I do, I learn more about the music, the composers, the person I am paying tribute to, and myself. What is the greatest lesson that you've learned in the world of cabaret over the past 25 years?
To just be who you are, because people know when you're not. To always sing for your audience, not at your audience. Probably why I didn't go to Broadway. Broadway's a different way of singing, fourth wall at people. And if I have any real talent or skill set, it's bringing 60 people in a room and making them feel like they're in my living room and making them feel like I am there for them, not for myself. Oh, yeah, of course we reap the benefits. There's no denying that it's great when people clap and you're on stage. I'm not even going to deny that, but it's not the reason I do this. And that's been the biggest lesson and the biggest thing the more I accepted that it was about someone else and outside of myself, strangely enough, the better my voice got. Strangely enough, the better my performance skills got. You know, when you just get away from comparing yourself to other people, we're apples and oranges, all of us. We all have different gifts. Do I covet people's voices? I think Julie Rayburn has one of the most beautiful voices on earth. Of course I covet her talent, but she's Julie. It's what she is. It's not what I am, you know? So to get rid of doing that and just say, this is who I am, and people seem to like it. And it's been a hard lesson to learn, to get out of my own way.
Do you think that that's the biggest hurdle that you faced in cabaret, or are there other hurdles that you would put before that?
The biggest hurdle is always your own mindset about your own talent. It really is. And I'll say that to anybody I'm coaching, working with, teaching, you know, and it doesn't mean be obnoxiously confident. It just means if you don't believe you have talent, what the hell are you doing on stage? You'd be really stupid to be on stage if you didn't think you had talent. So it starts from there. But then taking classes, continuing to listen and be open to constructive criticism, and putting the kibosh on those people that want to kill your dreams and that want to tell you otherwise, that you're not talented. I always say that you're not as good as your best review, and you're certainly not as bad as your worst. That it's always someplace in between. And art is up to the individual person on the other side of the camera and on the other side of the mic. You know, it's for them to decide.
Now, as I'm sitting here talking to you, as we're getting to the end of our show, which I can't believe, I see all of the comments. I'm sure that everyone here watching the show see you as a very established, grounded person in this community. Do you feel established in this community?
I feel valued. I don't know established is the right word. I feel valued by the people who look at me and appreciate what I do and respect what I do. You know, producing is like another passion of mine, but if I produced full time, then I wouldn't be able to devote as much time to my own performance. So like everything, I always prefer to be a jack of all trades and master of none, because that means I can just do more things and express myself in different ways. But I think other people think I'm established. So again, it's for them to decide whether or not they think I'm established, but I feel appreciated and loved in this business now. And I thank everybody who's tuned in and everyone who supports my work here or wherever, you know, however. I really, really, really appreciate it. I said that in my thank you message this year for Thanksgiving. So.
And what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned from life that has helped you in the world of cabaret?
You know, I live by treat others as you would have yourself be treated. I mean, it sounds biblical and I'm not overly religious, but, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the bottom line is I would never say intentionally, maybe I have unintentionally, I would never say or do anything to hurt anyone in a way that I wouldn't want to hear. You know, so offering unsolicited feedback, you know, Erin Cronican's amazing. Go watch her interview with Richard. It's a beautiful interview. But her pointing out in her circumstance of being sick, what is well received and isn't well received with the best intentions. Mm-hmm. You know, we do have to learn sometime that the best intentions are still insulting, to go up after someone after show and tell them what you think. Well, did they ask you? Did they ask you what do you think? Just be positive and let them have that moment of whatever. And if later on they ask you what you thought, then you answer. So, stuff like that I've learned to not do myself by having it being done to me,
Now, Sue, we are at the end of our show. We've spent the last hour looking back. What's next for you?
I am thinking about taking a little break for 2021. I always do this kind of get rid of 2020, which don't we all want to do,
Yes.
and just project forward on what I would like, and not set goals. I don't set goals. I just kind of map out some things I'd like to achieve for 2021. I do think I want to record. I do think I want to go back into the studio with Gregory and just have Steve Bustamante, who does such great work, come in and film us and get some more YouTube presence. And so I have some plans. I do have the show called This Broad's Way. That's all Broadway tunes done a la Gregory and Sue that I would love to find a way to put up in a way that respects the work. And then I have 2 other shows on the burner that I still want to do. So I'm writing and so I've got a lot planned for 2021. I'm going to take a little time the beginning of the year to just relax and be with Kenro and not do anything except maybe sew.
Well, if anybody can do it, you can do it. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I hope you had as much fun as I did with Sue. If you did, and if you don't mind, and if you haven't done so already, please go to my website, richardskipper.com. Sign my guest book with your thoughts about the show. That helps to get me boosted and booked in other arenas. So thank you for that. And tomorrow, my God, is going to be a busy day for me. First of all, at 5 o'clock, I'm interviewing Jody Carn. Now, a lot of you may not know Jody, but her mom, believe it or not, was the choreographer for The Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
So very amazing. And then at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, I've been asked to host the Dancers Over 40 Legacy Awards.
I studied with Francis. Francis was with Luigi. Francis was my teacher for years. I will so watch that. I'm very serious.
We're honoring her tomorrow night. I hosted the first Legacy Awards 11 years ago as Carol Channing at Swing 46. That night, Marge Champion, who we just lost, she was one of the recipients, and we're honoring her tomorrow night as well. One other thing, I always end every show by asking everyone to go out and do something nice for somebody else without expecting anything in return. And so what I'd like you to do is, there's little Sue there. I'd like you to go to your Facebook friends list, and I want you to reach out to the 4th person that pops up, and I want you to order 2 books. And the book is So You Want to Sing Cabaret, which Sue and David Sabella just wrote, and she may hold it up. There it is.
Here we go.
I want you to order, if you don't have the book already, order 1 for yourself and order 1 for the 4th friend on your friends list. If you're able to do that. I know it's a difficult time, and it's just only if you can. Now, before we end, Sue, I want to give you the final word. I want you to, you can talk about anything that we talked about that you want to expound upon, anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we had, or just any message that you want to put out to everybody right now. And I want to tell you, I tell you this all the time, and you know it's true. I love you.
I love you so much. You always kid around about our brother-sister thing. And, we've had some knockdown drag-outs when we disagreed with people, but what brother and sister hasn't? But my love for you and Danny and all that you do for this community, I would like to use this last minute just to say thank you to you, Richard Skipper, because no one does this better. And I didn't know we were going to go where we went today, and it was perfectly fine. I told you anything goes but every interview I watch, there's a presence in how you listen and how you bring out the best in people that you should be famous doing this. And all of you out there, write those comments and get him to go viral, because this is very important, because I think this is your calling and I think you need to do this. So that would be my final message and plea to everybody out there. And if anybody does buy the book, contact me. I will throw in a free CD or a little something special for you.
Great.
And
go right to Sue's website to do so.
Absolutely.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody, and make it a better tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
I love you.